I fell in love with my best friend's brother, Luke Conrad, the vice president of Zenith Technologies. After getting his number from my friend Rose Conrad, I used every trick in the book to catch his attention. "Mr. Conrad, you're my little crush," I'd message him. "You light up my heart." He responded by transferring me $50 with a note: "Stanford Medical Psychiatry Department is accepting new patients. You might want to make an appointment." After 3 months of pursuing him, this stoic, handsome man still hadn't shown any interest in me and remained incredibly reserved. So, feeling dejected, I let my best friend Rose drag me to a matchmaking service. The match they suggested was a balding, divorced man in his 30s who wouldn't stop harassing me with messages afterward. I couldn't control my temper and decided to send him a scathing reply, but I accidentally sent the message to Luke, who had rarely initiated contact with me before. "Who do you think you are, being so picky when no one's even interested?" That night, Luke pulled me into his arms and asked repeatedly, "Who am I?" Then, just after sending that angry message to the matchmaking guy, I was about to block and delete him when I felt a chill run down my spine. Looking at my phone more carefully, oh no, that profile picture. It was Luke! I frantically tried to go back to delete the message, my hands shaking as I prayed Luke wouldn't see it. But in my panic, I hit delete instead of recall, and the message criticizing him vanished from my phone. Heavens above! Why punish a beautiful, kind, graceful woman like me with such an awkward situation? I covered my face, too embarrassed to look at my phone, waiting for Luke's fury. Previously, he'd gotten angry just for me sending him cheesy pickup lines I found online. I couldn't imagine how he'd react to such a direct confrontation. After 5 minutes of silence, I noticed he still hadn't replied. This gave me a glimmer of hope. Maybe he hadn't seen the message yet. Perhaps I could sneak into his house and delete it before he noticed. I gave myself a mental high five for such a brilliant idea. I immediately called Rose to confirm her brother's location. My brother should be working from home right now. I heard him mention an international conference call tonight. Want me to message him and ask? No, I shrieked. Whatever you do, don't message him. Rose, if you can't reach me tomorrow, please call the police. Rose laughed heartily on the other end. What this about? Are you finally going to make your move on my brother? Rose, I'm not bold enough to force myself on him, I protested, holding my head in my hands. Don't worry, Addie. My brother doesn't bite, Rose reassured me. I won't call you tomorrow morning. I'll wait until the afternoon. Hopefully by then you'll have good news about winning my brother over. Before I could argue further, Rose quickly hung up. I hurriedly got myself together and drove to Luke's villa. When I arrived, I found the housekeeper, Mr. Lewis, tending to the garden. Having visited many times before, I greeted him familiarly. Good evening, Mr. Lewis. Isn't it a bit dark to be gardening? Seeing it was me, Mr. Lewis promptly stood up. Indeed, too dark to see properly. I was just about to head in. Would you like to come inside, Miss Carter? I nodded eagerly. Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. As Mr. Lewis led me into the villa, he asked, coming to play chess with Mr. Conrad so late, Miss Carter? I scratched my head awkwardly. Yes, our last game wasn't quite finished. I'd learned that Luke enjoyed playing Go after asking Rose about his interests. I'd spent 2 weeks learning the game, then boldly asked to be his student. At first, Luke hadn't noticed my ulterior motives and politely agreed to play with me. But after just 2 games, he threw down his stones and said he wouldn't teach an idiot. He said if I became his student, I'd only ruin his reputation and told me to find another teacher. Those words had me hiding in a corner, covering my mouth as I cried. Mr. Conrad is in his study upstairs. Take the elevator, you'll see it right ahead. Have a good evening with Mr. Conrad. Mr. Lewis swiped the elevator card for me, his smile seeming somewhat odd, but I was too preoccupied to dwell on it. The elevator quickly reached the 2nd floor, opening directly opposite Luke's study. The study door was slightly ajar, with Luke's voice drifting out. He was still in his meeting. I wondered if he had his personal phone with him. Rose had mentioned he usually left it in his bedroom while working. I decided to take a chance. I tiptoed toward his bedroom, and when I pushed open the door, the motion sensor lights came on, casting a warm glow that revealed the room's layout. There was minimal decoration, the environment clean and elegant, very much Luke's style. The whole room carried the same fresh cedar scent that Luke always wore. I couldn't help taking several deep breaths, but then remembered my mission and gave myself 2 light slaps. Focus, Addie. This is no time for daydreaming. Finding that phone is urgent. I bent down to search the bed for the phone, completely unaware that a tall figure had appeared behind me. Miss Carter, may I ask what you're doing? Luke's sudden question nearly made me jump out of my skin. I collapsed onto the floor. Luke, I mean, Mr. Conrad. Conrad. Would you believe I'm here to apply for a housekeeping position? Luke reached over and turned on the room lights. The sudden brightness made me squint. When my eyes adjusted, I found Luke standing before me, looking down at me coldly. Oh my poor heart couldn't take it. Luke's contemptuous look was making certain parts of me tingle. Luke spoke calmly, "Miss Carter, your joke isn't very funny." Then he stepped past me and sat on his large bed. Tonight Luke wore dark silk pajamas. The clothes fit him perfectly, highlighting his muscular frame. The deep V-neck design revealed glimpses of his pale chest muscles as he moved. He leaned forward toward me. "Miss Carter, if you don't explain why you're in my bedroom, I might have to call the police." Looking at the deep V-neck Luke presented before my eyes, I swallowed hard, torn between explaining and running before deciding to peek inside. "Addie, where are you looking?" I wasn't looking anywhere," I stammered. Luke reached out and gripped my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes. "Last chance, why are you here so late?" Looking at Luke's ethereal face so close to mine, my breathing slowed and I was unconsciously enchanted into telling the truth. "I came to delete a WeChat message." Luke raised an eyebrow. "If you're referring to that message insulting me, I'm afraid I've already seen it." My face burned red as I tried to explain. "Luke, hear me out, that message was meant for someone else. Please don't take it personally." Luke pulled me up from the floor with one swift motion. Too late. When I regained consciousness, it was already noon the next day. I was alone in Luke's bedroom. Supporting my aching waist, I struggled to get up from the bed. I grabbed the clothes left by the bedside and quickly put them on. While Luke wasn't around, I had to escape quick. "Escape? Where do you think you're going, Miss Carter?" Luke entered with a breakfast tray. I put on a serious face and made up an excuse. "Well, my grandmother just called saying my grandfather went into labor, so I need to go help him with postpartum care." I tried to slip past him with my head down, but Luke blocked me with his arm. "Leaving after having your way with me? Is that appropriate?" I looked up at him steadily. "Luke, do you like me?" Luke seemed caught off guard by my directness. He simply handed me the tray and left, saying, "Figure it out yourself." I stared at the slightly overcooked sunny-side-up eggs. "Figure it out myself? Either you like someone or you don't. What's there to figure out?" When I went downstairs, Mr. Lewis stood at the door with a knowing smile. "Miss Carter, Mr. Conrad said he's headed to the office. Would you like me to arrange a driver to take you home?" I shook my head. "Thank you, Mr. Lewis, but I'll manage on my own." As soon as I got home, Rose called. "Well, did you successfully win my brother over?" I collapsed onto the couch, memories of last night flooding back. "Your brother was quite impressive." Rose played dumb. "Impressive how? Give me details." I felt my face flush again. "Hey, no prying." Rose giggled on the other end. "So does this mean I should start calling you sister-in-law?" "What sister-in-law? Your brother said he doesn't like me." Rose exclaimed in surprise. "How is that possible?" "Well, we did, you know, but when I asked if he liked me, he just told me to figure it out myself." "Doesn't that mean he doesn't like me?" Rose fell silent. "Forget it, Rose. I've decided I'm going to stay single with you. Just as sisters is the best." Rose laughed in agreement. "All right then. Whoever gets a boyfriend first is a dog." "That's right. My motto is to never let a man slow down my sword drawing speed." "Perfect. It's decided then. From now on, we sisters will walk through fields of grass but never let a blade touch us." After chatting with Rose, I felt a bit dizzy, so I took some antibiotics and curled up on the couch to sleep. In my drowsy state, I felt very hot and instinctively tried to lift my clothes, but noticed a handsome man hovering before my eyes. I tried to reach for him, wanting him to help me undress, but couldn't catch him. Still so restless when you're sick. A cool towel wiped my body, bringing refreshing relief. I grabbed the towel and rubbed against it frantically. She must be feverish. Better take her to the hospital. So when I woke up, I found myself in the hospital with Luke sitting on a nearby couch. He was frowning at his tablet, seemingly dealing with work. Luke, my throat was dry and painful. Water. I need water. Seeing I was awake, Luke brought over a cup of warm water and helped me drink. After a few sips, my throat felt better. "Why am I in the hospital?" Luke sighed. "That egg I made you yesterday was rice wine egg. Didn't you notice?" "Wait, you made that egg?" I was shocked. Luke actually cooked for me. If I'd known, I would have eaten more. Luke nodded. "I heard it's good for recovery, so I made it for you." "But you took antibiotics. Don't you know mixing alcohol and antibiotics can be deadly?" I clicked my tongue, remembering the egg's taste. The egg was burnt. I only tasted char, no wine flavor at all. Oh no! I remember taking antibiotics before sleeping. Mixing antibiotics with alcohol is a direct ticket to meeting your maker. Good thing I didn't eat much, or even the gods couldn't have saved me. Luke raised an elegant eyebrow. So how do you plan to repay this life-saving grace? Without thinking, I blurted out, a life debt must be repaid with marriage. That's not entirely unreasonable, Luke said, tucking the blanket around me. I doubted my ears. Luke, are you saying you want me to marry you? Thinking I might back out, Luke quickly said, what, are you surprised? This is a life debt after all. I burst into loud tears. I've been chasing you for over 3 months, and finally caught you. My crying drew looks from several nurses. Luke hurriedly pulled out a handkerchief to cover my mouth. Stop crying. You weren't pretty to begin with. Crying makes it worse. I grabbed the handkerchief and took several deep sniffs. Stop lying. Everyone knows I'm as beautiful as a fairy. You should feel lucky to have such a gorgeous girlfriend. Luke smiled and pinched my cheek. Yes, girlfriend. I felt so happy I thought I must be dreaming, until Rose's sudden shout woke me. Addie, are you okay? My brother said you were at death's door. I rushed to the hospital to see you one last time. I reassured her, Rose, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Addie, get well soon. We promise to stay single together. If you leave, I'll have no sister to keep me company. Luke looked puzzled. What's this about staying single? Oh, Addie and I made a pact to stay single together. Whoever gets a boyfriend first is a dog. Luke gave me an amused look. You two are quite something. I could only laugh nervously. Yeah, haha. To avoid becoming a dog in front of Rose. After that, Luke and I started an exciting secret relationship. Addie, there's this amazing movie coming out for Chinese Valentine's Day. Want to watch it together tonight? Rose tugged at my hand pleadingly. But it's Valentine's Day. I want to spend it with Luke. No buts. Are you, a single person, planning to spend it alone? Let's watch the movie and then get some male models to dance for us. All right. I reluctantly agreed to Rose's plan, then messaged Luke to tell him about the movie plans. He didn't reply for a while, probably busy with work. After buying ticket, I sent Luke a screenshot and headed out with Rose. Even after the movie started, people were still trickling in. Rose was quietly complaining to me when a male voice interrupted, excuse me, coming through. The man wore a mask, and in the dim theater I couldn't make out who he was at first. After Rose and I shifted to let him pass, he sat down next to me. Addie, doesn't that guy seem familiar? Feel like I've seen him somewhere. You think every handsome guy looks familiar. Just watch the movie. Rose nodded and became absorbed in the film. In the darkness, a warm hand reached over, first gently caressing my thigh, then moving to my side to hold my hand. Luke leaned close to my ear and whispered, of course I have to spend Valentine's Day with Addie. I turned to glare at him. What was he thinking, risking exposure in front of Rose? Luke wasn't bothered. His fingers traced circles on my palm, making my heart flutter. I was about to warn him to behave when Rose suddenly grabbed my arm. Holy crap! That's so scary! I quickly pulled my hand away from Luke to comfort Rose. Luke chuckled softly and whispered in my ear, so Addie's quite brave. How about you protect me from now on? As he spoke, his hand slid toward my waist. Touching such a sensitive spot would make me jump. Near the end of the movie, Luke got up to leave first. Addie, I'll wait outside. Let's go on a date. I was already dizzy from his touches and just nodded stupidly. When the movie ended and the lights came on, Rose exclaimed, Addie, are you in shock? Your face is so red. I'm fine. Ring, ring, ring. My alarm went off and I quickly answered. Yes, I'm coming right away. Rose, I have to go. Something came up. Happy Valentine's Day. Get home safe. I left Rose standing there bewildered. Addie, your phone is upside down. I ran so fast I didn't hear what Rose was saying. My mind focused only on seeing Luke. In my rush, I crashed into someone's embrace as soon as I left the theater. Only when that familiar cedar scent surrounded me did I feel at ease. Luke called my name tenderly. Addie, I want to take you somewhere. I nodded, letting him guide me toward a secluded emergency exit. Darkness fell around us, with only the emergency exit sign casting a faint green glow. Luke gently cupped my face in his large hands. Addie, this is our first Valentine's Day together. I excitedly gave him a quick kiss. So what are we doing for our date? Luke smiled proudly. Didn't you say you've wanted to try the claw machines for a long time? I bought 10,000 tokens at the arcade. Today, you can play however you like. Yay! 10,000 tokens was quite a lot, so we decided to save them and only took 500 for now. I hugged the heavy box of tokens, grinning from ear to ear. My dear Luke, lead your queen to the prettiest claw claw machine. Luke immediately played along. Yes, Your Majesty, this way. Sure enough, Luke's sharp eyes quickly found the claw machine I liked most. Who am I today? I'm Addie 10,000 Tokens Carter, and this little claw machine is mine. 15 minutes later. Why won't it come out? Luke sighed helplessly. Want me to try? I moved aside dejectedly. Go ahead, Luke. One last try. If you can't get it, I give up on this stupid toy. Luke focused intently on the doll in the cabinet, constantly adjusting the claw's position. With 5 seconds left on the countdown, Luke moved decisively, the claw dropping precisely onto the doll. I held my breath as the claw lifted the doll. My previous attempts had all failed when the claw shook near the drop point. But now at this crucial moment, the claw didn't shake. I watched in disbelief as my dream doll simply dropped right into the collection box. I excitedly hugged his arm and jumped up and down. Ha ha ha, thank you, honey. My honey is the best at claw machines. Happy with my success, I called Luke by the pet name I'd always wanted to use but never dared. Luke was startled at first, then his ears began turning an unusual shade of red. So Luke could get embarrassed too? He let me shake his arm, smiling adoringly. Let's get the next one. We'll play until my wife is happy. A handsome man's smile is truly unfair, but calling you wife while smiling is super unfair. In the second half, Luke was practically a claw machine god. Every token was well spent, with perfect accuracy. We ended up with more plush toys than we could carry. Luke, let's go home. We'll save the other tokens for next time. Alright, whatever Addie wants. Luke took the bag of plush toys from my hands. Let's go home. Back at Luke's villa, we cuddled for a while before Luke told me to shower first. When I came out of the bathroom, I saw Luke holding my phone. My heart dropped, and I rushed to grab it back. He anticipated my move and raised his hand, avoiding me. I fell gracelessly onto the bed, like a defeated puppy, looking quite pathetic. Luke, give me back my phone. How can you snoop through someone's privacy? Luke shook his head with a smile. So nervous? What secrets can't I see? Please don't read my chats with Rose. I had discussed many plans about pursuing Luke with Rose. It would be over if he saw those. Luke nodded. Don't worry, I haven't looked at your chat. I was about to breathe a sigh of relief when he turned the phone toward me. He really hadn't read my chats with Rose. He was looking at my TikTok favorites. I think you need to explain this. After all, I don't think your boyfriend's appearance and physique are that bad. So why are you looking at other men online? Luke looked at my favorites list, full of muscular men with broad shoulders and long legs, and laughed coldly. Would you believe me if I said I just like the background music? I laughed nervously, trying to dodge the issue. That excuse is even worse than saying you came to apply as a housekeeper that night. Luke looked down at me, smiling but with emotions I couldn't quite read in his eyes. Fine, I'll be honest. I saved those videos when I was lonely. You know I liked you, but you ignored me for 3 months. I needed some eye candy to comfort myself. But you have to believe me, I only looked, never did anything inappropriate. And I haven't watched any since we got together. Check the last video if you don't believe me, it's definitely not recent. Luke, trust me. Luke sighed. So, you're blaming me for not agreeing to be with you earlier? I shook my head. How could I blame you? I like you so much, I'm just happy you agreed to be with me. Luke's eyes grew dark and unclear. You really mean that? I nodded vigorously, wanting him to see my sincerity. After a long moment, Luke seemed to make some decision and hugged me. He said, I'm sorry, Addie. I lied to you. That night, I left Luke's villa without looking back. The whole way home, I kept thinking about everything I'd done these past days. Suddenly it all seemed laughable. So laughable I could hardly breathe. I rolled down the car window hoping to look at the scenery, but the wind hurt my eyes, and tears silently rolled down my cheeks. Luke said he had lied to me, and not just him, but Rose too. He said he had fallen in love with me before I fell for him, back in our student days when I didn't even know him. Back then, Luke was neglected by the Conrad family. He was too insecure to approach me directly. Later, when he achieved success in business and was truly accepted by the Conrad family, he had his sister Rose befriend me and become my closest confidant. Through Rose, he learned all my preferences and modified himself accordingly, working out, skincare, changing his style, until he became my ideal type. So when Rose first showed me Luke's photo, I helplessly fell for this man who seemed tailor-made for me. Luke believed I wouldn't treasure something easily obtained, so he set a 3-month probation period. He watched as I pulled out all the stops to pursue him. He must have felt so smug then, watching the person he liked frantically falling for him, using every trick to win his favor. I didn't need to imagine how satisfying that must have felt. After 3 months, I did indeed become discouraged. That's when Rose took me matchmaking under the pretense of cheering me up, introducing me to that creepy creepy divorced man they had arranged. I have to admit they really understood me. That man disgusted me so much that I became even more devoted to Luke. After that, my relationship with Luke, getting sick and being saved by him, our secret romance, everything was part of the Conrad siblings' plan. Just thinking about these things made me feel sick enough to throw up. No wonder I saw such intense possessiveness in Luke's eyes that night. I had wondered how such a cold person could develop such strong feelings for me. Now it all made sense. That night, after returning home, I quickly packed some essentials and booked a flight back to my parents' house, blocking both Conrad siblings' contacts before boarding. When I got home, my parents wondered why I hadn't brought my boyfriend to meet them, since I had practically painted Luke as perfect over the phone. Coming home alone like this was very unusual. That night, as I cried under my covers, Mom opened my bedroom door. "Sweetie, why are you crying? Is it heartbreak? Tell Mom about it." I threw myself into Mom's arms and told her everything about Luke and me between sobs. After listening, Mom's eyes were also red as she rubbed my back to comfort me. "My poor baby got hurt. Mom, I hate myself for being so easily led by others, for giving away my heart so carelessly." Mom held me tight. "Sweetie, don't hate yourself. Love is never wrong, people are. Just like you loved Luke, spent time and effort on him, and felt happy being with him. Luke was the same. He put in effort to win you, and felt happy being with you. These are all proofs of love, so don't hate yourself. Being brave enough to love is never wrong. The person who did wrong was Luke. He was wrong to lie to you, wrong to disrespect you, wrong to try to casually control someone's feelings." That night, Mom stayed with me and said many things. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but I remember Mom saying that whether to love someone and whether to forgive someone who deceived you are both choices that belong to me. The next day when I woke up, the sun was already high. Looking at the drifting clouds, my thoughts became clearer. I knew for certain that I loved Luke, but I also hated his deception. But should I give up my love because of hate? I was uncertain. Dad made me delicious food, and I watched my parents' sweet daily bickering at the dinner table. In that moment, I understood. Luke moved very quickly. By the third afternoon, I saw him at the bottom of my family's apartment building. I was walking my mom's corgi when I spotted Luke in the distance. Rose stood behind him, and both siblings looked quite dejected. "Addie, I was wrong. I shouldn't have schemed with my brother against you." Rose spoke first. Then Luke. "Addie, I'm sorry. I was too cowardly. I was afraid you wouldn't love me, so I nodded, accepting their apologies. Rose, thank you. When I first moved to City C and knew no one, you became my friend and gave me some wonderful times, so thank you. Luke too, thank you. Though I don't remember meeting you in our student days, my love for you wasn't fake, and the happiness you gave me wasn't fake, so thank you as well." I looked at them both. "I accept your apologies, but I really can't forgive what you did. So, let's go back to being strangers." At these words, Luke's tears fell in large drops. He tried to kneel, but I quickly supported him, not letting him do so. "Luke, I truly loved you, but the moment I learned this was all a scheme, I think that love should end. Let's part on good terms." Luke asked through his tears if there was really no room for reconciliation. He loved me so much, and it was because of that love that he came up with this plan to deceive me. I told him, if I force myself to forgive now, then for the rest of our lives, every time you say you love me, I'll remember this deception. Once trust is broken, it can never be rebuilt. Luke seemed to understand my meaning. With trembling hands, he left with Rose for City C. We became strangers again. Later, I lived with my parents for a while, but feeling bored, I started traveling around the country. During my travels, I met several like-minded friends. We explored our country's beautiful landscapes together and tasted delicacies from all over. I still have the capacity to love and be loved, but love doesn't weigh as heavily in my heart anymore. After all, life isn't just about romance. Luke's side story. My sister Rose and I were both illegitimate children of the Conrad family. One condition for accepting us back into the family was our mother's suicide, so we lost our mother at a very young age. No one in the Conrad family protected Rose and me. I had to become strong to show my value to the family, so Rose and I could have a better life. Who would have thought that a girl named Addie Carter would burst into my bitter life? But back then, I was too busy just surviving to get to know her. Later, when I truly succeeded in business, I wanted to try finding her again. That's when I made the most regrettable decision of my life. I probably should have anticipated today's outcome the day I asked Rose to approach Addie. The earlier Addie was so pure. Rose, who deliberately approached her, quickly became her best friend in City C. Looking at the dating preferences Rose sent me, I meticulously sculpted myself. I wanted Addie to fall for me too, to love me as I loved her. That would be fair, right? Later Rose Rose told me Addie really did like me, and joy clouded my judgment. For 3 months, I watched her dramatically pursue me, watched her pour her heart into it, and I felt elated. I was actually loved. I was actually loved by the person I'd kept in my heart for years. But after I truly had Addie, besides happiness, I felt more fear. I was afraid that one day when the truth came out, I would lose her. So I investigated her past life, checked her phone, trying to find some leverage over Addie to keep her from leaving me. After Rose's hint, I first saw her TikTok favorites. I thought such a small mistake would be good practice, so I tried confronting her about it. But her words awakened me. She said, how could she blame me, right? How could I bear to? If I truly loved her, how could I bear to watch her struggle so much? Having experienced unrequited love myself, I knew how hard it was, yet the twist in me still chose to torment her for 3 months. Watching her sincerity and effort, instead of feeling heartache, I felt pleasure, felt it was fair. Saying it now sounds quite laughable. I'm a bit disgusted with myself. My conscience and rationality forced me to confess to her. I thought she would hit me, curse me, I would give her anything she wanted. But she didn't. After hearing everything, she just silently cried, then turned and left decisively. I didn't chase after her. I felt I needed to calm down too. Tomorrow, I'll apologize to her tomorrow. But I didn't know that Addie, and I would never have another tomorrow. It took me some time to find Addie's home address. I brought Rose with me. We needed to apologize to her. Seeing Addie again, I was too overcome with emotion to speak. Happiness had once been so close. In my days, Rose remembered our purpose and apologized first, then I followed. Addie didn't even scold us. She actually thanked us. I thought we could be together again, but the next second she said we should go back to being strangers. Only then did I clearly see the gap between Addie and me. No matter how hard I tried, we were always from different worlds. I was like a rat in the gutter, despicable and shameless. This love was something I schemed to get, and I was the one most unworthy to speak of love. I felt I could never face her again. For a long time afterward, I blocked all news of her. I focused on my career and threw myself into charity work. Since I couldn't learn to love properly, at least let me do well in business. If I couldn't learn to love one person, then I'd first learn to give back to society. The next time I heard news of Addie, she had become a famous internet travel blogger. Fans praised her videos for their beautiful visuals and moving narratives. Indeed, Addie was just Addie. She went to see the world with love, so everything she expressed was full of love. As for me, I still need to keep learning. Love might be my lifelong lesson.